Born under the California sun on February 11, 1969, in Sherman Oaks, Los Angeles, Jennifer Joanna Aniston learned far too early that love could vanish without warning. Long before the world knew her as Rachel Green, she was simply a quiet child, standing between the light of cameras and the shadows of a fractured home. Her father, John Aniston, was a Greek-born actor with a commanding presence on screen, yet distant in the rooms where it mattered most. Her mother, Nancy Dow, a striking beauty of Italian, English, and Irish descent, carried expectations heavier than love itself. Even her godfather, the legendary Telly Savalas, added strokes of glamour to her lineage, but fame surrounded her without ever filling the emptiness inside. When Jennifer was just a toddler, her father's career pulled the family to New York City. The skyscrapers dazzled her young eyes, but no amount of city lights could warm the chill settling between her parents. By the time she turned 9, the cracks in their marriage had widened into an unbridgeable chasm. One evening, her father simply left, not for work, but from her daily life altogether. It wasn't the leaving that hurt most, she would whisper years later. It was the silence that followed. The silence that taught her love could disappear without a sound, while the world kept turning, as if nothing had broken. At home with her mother, a different storm raged. Nancy's pursuit of perfection became relentless. Comments about Jennifer's weight, her posture, the way she carried herself were constant, meant perhaps as guidance, but felt like tiny blades to a girl starving for tenderness. So Jennifer learned to make people laugh, to perform, to hide her ache behind humor. It became her armor, her only shelter in a world that felt increasingly unsafe. Life was far from golden. Money was scarce, tempers were shorter, and when success finally knocked on Jennifer's door, the past returned with its cruelest echo. In 1996, her mother stepped onto national television, revealing intimate family wounds that were never hers to share. 2 years later came the memoir, a book that turned private trust into public spectacle. To Jennifer, it wasn't merely betrayal, it was exposure under the harshest lights imaginable. For 15 long years, mother and daughter would barely speak, the wound too deep to heal quickly. Meanwhile, in Springfield, Missouri, Brad Pitt was born on December 18, 1963, in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and raised as the eldest child of a deeply devout Baptist family. His father, William, ran a trucking business with an unbending sense of duty and discipline. His mother, Jane, was kind and faithful, but even her warmth existed within lines drawn impossibly tight. To the outside world, their life appeared wholesome, picture-perfect even. But inside, for a boy as sensitive and tender as Brad, it felt suffocating. By the age of 6, he already knew how to measure each word carefully before speaking. By 10, he had perfected the mask, becoming the charming, athletic kid who could light up any room while his own heart learned to hide in the darkest corners. He would later confess, almost in a whisper, that he grew up hiding behind a smile, a confession that carried the weight of 1,000 tears never shed. Growing up in a household where faith was sacred but feelings were absolutely forbidden created a boy who learned to perform happiness while dying inside. In church pews every Sunday, he sat so still that even breathing felt like an act of rebellion. At school, he ran faster and laughed louder than anyone else, desperately trying to prove that belonging was actually possible. And at night, when the house finally fell silent, he would lie awake in his small room, tracing the cracks on the ceiling like they were unanswered prayers, wondering if anyone in the world truly saw him for who he really was beneath the performance. The world saw only brightness, a golden boy with an easy laugh and perfect manners. But inside him lived the restlessness of someone already aching for a gentleness that never came, for permission to simply be vulnerable without judgment. That contradiction of being radiant from afar, yet uncertain up close, became the quiet curse that would follow him throughout his entire life. Loved by millions of adoring fans, yet still desperately searching for the simple safety of being truly understood by even one person. Jennifer found her first refuge in the quiet corners of her childhood, in tattered notebooks filled with stories and the fragile belief that imagination could save her. While other children filled playgrounds with carefree laughter, she hid within daydreams, scribbling little worlds where love stayed and no one left without saying goodbye. By the age of 6, imagination had become her only truly safe place, a secret stage where she could become anyone, anywhere, free from the fractures tearing apart her home.
Her parents enrolled her at the Waldorf School, a small sanctuary that taught creativity not as rebellion, but as survival itself. There she discovered something sacred, that storytelling could transform pain into purpose, that performance could be more than just escape. It could actually be healing. At 14, she stepped into the world that would ultimately define her future, LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan. Under the watchful, demanding eyes of acting coach Anthony Ebbison, Jennifer learned the lesson that would shape her entire craft forever. Real acting isn't about pretending or putting on a show. It's about standing completely unguarded and letting the world see your soul. All of it. The broken parts and the beautiful parts together. In dim rehearsal rooms that smelled faintly of dust and old paint, she fought daily battles between fear and belonging, between giving up and pushing forward. After graduating in 1987, the dream she'd nurtured gave way to harsh struggle. There were no red carpets waiting, no agents calling, only telemarketing scripts she read in a monotone voice, diner aprons stained with coffee, and long bicycle rides through Manhattan's unforgiving rain. Each odd job she worked bought her exactly one audition, and each rejection became another long night spent questioning whether the little girl who once escaped into stories had believed too deeply in magic that didn't exist. From forgotten films like Mac and Me to half-lit commercials selling products she couldn't afford and pilots that never aired, she gathered tiny crumbs of hope from a city that barely looked up. There were moments when she whispered to herself in the mirror, "Maybe this dream isn't for me. Maybe I should go home." But even drowning in that doubt, she kept showing up, kept trying, kept believing that somehow, somewhere, her moment would come. Brad packed his battered Datsun in 1986 with everything he owned and drove west toward an uncertain future. He wasn't just leaving Missouri behind, he was fleeing invisibility itself, escaping the suffocating quiet that had become a cage around his soul. The politeness, the rules, the expectations had all become a prison he could no longer survive inside. He was 23 years old, 2 credits short of his college graduation, clutching a few cassette tapes, a bag of wrinkled clothes, and exactly $325, the sum total of his dream and his desperation. The road to Los Angeles was not paved with hope or promise, but with raw hunger, the kind that devours you completely if you stay still for even a moment. He waited tables at restaurants where celebrities dined, delivered refrigerators to mansions he would never live in, chauffeured wealthy strangers to parties he'd never be invited to, and even sweated inside a giant chicken costume on street corners, waving at passing cars just to earn enough money to stay afloat one more week. Each dollar he made peeled away another layer of the pride his father had taught him to wear like armor. Yet every single hour he spent in Roy London's acting class stitched a fragment of his shattered soul back together. "That class saved my life," Brad would say years later with genuine emotion. "It was the first time in my entire existence I was actually allowed to feel without being punished for it." Hollywood opened its glittering doors like a beautiful mirage, shimmering with promise, then cruelly vanishing when he reached for it. Between 1987 and 1990, he drifted through forgettable small guest roles in shows like Dallas, Growing Pains, and 21 Jump Street. He was always a face in the background, never a name anyone remembered. But then came Thelma and Louise in 1991, and everything changed in the span of 15 minutes of screen time that would both crown him and curse him forever. With sun-bleached hair and that impossibly easy grin, he became the instant obsession of an entire generation practically overnight. His face suddenly papered bedroom walls across America, His name turned into valuable currency in Hollywood. Magazines fought for his interviews. Yet behind all that golden glow and public adoration, a deep unease began growing inside him like a shadow. "I was genuinely uncomfortable with that label," he admitted years later, his voice soft with old pain. "I desperately wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, as an artist." The role that had finally opened Hollywood's golden gates wide for him also locked him inside its most beautiful but confining cage. He had escaped Missouri's suffocating silence only to find himself trapped again, this time behind his own reflection, behind an image the world loved but that felt nothing like his true self. Before Brad entered her life, Jennifer had loved Tate Donovan deeply. They met in 1995, and for 3 years their love felt unshakable. But by 1998, their relationship had quietly unraveled. Then fate played its cruelest trick when Tate was cast as her love interest on Friends. Every week they had to pretend to fall in love while privately falling apart. It was the quiet rehearsal for all the heartbreaks that followed. Brad's first great love was Gwyneth Paltrow. They met in 1994 on the set of Seven, and he proposed in 1996. But Gwyneth, still in her early 20s, wasn't ready for the weight of expectation. When she ended the engagement in 1997, Brad disappeared from public view for months, learning that even the purest hearts can't save each other if they're not ready to be held. When Brad and Jennifer met in 1998 through mutual friends, neither expected salvation, yet somehow they became it for each other. Their love began in stillness, shared dinners and long talks that slipped past midnight. "It was easy," Jennifer said later. "They understood each other without trying." By 2000, their Malibu wedding became the world's favorite fairy tale. 200 guests, 50,000 flowers, fireworks bursting across the night sky. They built a life that looked effortless, founding Plan B Entertainment together and dreaming of the family they hoped to grow. But beneath the surface, a silence began to grow. Jennifer longed for motherhood, imagining baby footsteps echoing through sunlit hallways. They tried desperately, multiple rounds of treatments, sleepless nights, and prayers whispered into darkness. The world watched her body like public property, calling her selfish for being childless, never knowing the private war she was fighting. Then came the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where Brad met Angelina Jolie. What began as fiction turned into foreshadowing. Tabloids exploded with images of Brad and Angelina laughing between takes. Every photograph felt like a small betrayal. Jennifer carried her pain with grace, never shouting, never fighting back publicly. When their separation was announced in January 2005, the world stopped breathing. For 5 years, they had been Hollywood's heartbeat, proof that love could survive fame. Their split felt like something sacred had cracked. Yet they ended beautifully, dividing their empire with rare dignity. No courtroom battles, no accusations, just two exhausted souls choosing peace over resentment. Jennifer received their Beverly Hills home and several estates, eventually selling the house for $29 million. Brad kept Plan B Entertainment and the French vineyard they'd dreamed of filling with children's laughter. From afar, Jennifer watched his new life bloom with 6 children. The family portraits she'd once prayed would be hers. She revealed years later that she'd undergone multiple treatments and failures, wishing someone had told her to freeze her eggs. Today, with a net worth of $320 million, Jennifer lives in quiet serenity in her Bel Air sanctuary. She owns properties in Montecito, drives modest luxury cars, and donates generously to children's hospitals and animal rescues. Her home remains peaceful, filled with friends, dogs, and the hum of her own thoughts. She has made peace with the life she has, even if it isn't the one she imagined. Brad, worth over $400 million, lives in a $12 million Los Angeles mansion with his companion, Inez Ramon. He owns the cliffside house in Carmel and still battles over the French vineyard with Angelina. His collection of cars and art cannot fill the silence left by his estranged children. In 2024, his daughter Shiloh legally dropped his surname. He once said he hit the lottery with his kids, then wasted it. Still, he continues working, remains sober, practices yoga, and donates millions quietly to rebuild homes and support disaster relief. In 2020, backstage at an award show, they met again. Cameras caught the brief touch of hands, the shared laugh, the warmth that lives only between people who have truly forgiven each other. Jennifer said there's nothing but love between them, and Brad seemed to agree. Not with longing, but gratitude. Their love story may have ended, but their lives remain quietly intertwined, two halves of a Hollywood legend that still glows softer now, but never dim. Jennifer found peace without revenge. Brad found humility without breaking. They are no longer the golden couple, but something far more human. Two people who had everything, lost everything, and still rose. One in quiet light, the other in quiet shadow. The lesson they leave behind is that true victory lies not in how perfectly you love, but in how gracefully you let go. Even when the fairy tale ends, life and beauty can still begin again.